So the second story that this missionary girl sent me to try to prove that human sacrifice and vicarious atonement is acceptable to the God of Israel takes place in 2 Samuel chapter 21. It says that in the days of David, there was a famine for 3 years. And David was trying to figure out, why is this famine affecting the land of Israel? So he inquired of God, and it was revealed to him that it was on account of Saul and the house of blood for the matter over the Gibeonites. So King David approached the Gibeonites, and he asked them what their complaint was. And they said that King Saul had tried to kill out the Gibeonites, and they were very angry, and their blood was burning hotly inside of them. And they wanted to kill 7 of King Saul's members of his household. King David tried reasoning with them. He said, "Let me give you whatever money you ask for. If you want silver or gold, I'll give it to you, but don't kill people." The Gibeonites were not having it. They insisted upon taking 7 people and killing them. And King David gave them over. The missionary is trying to prove that the 7 people were given as vicarious atonement in order to end the famine. The question is what is actually happening here? So let's deconstruct this. The very first question we have to ask is, who were the Gibeonites? The Gibeonites were one of the nations that lived in Israel before the Jewish people crossed over the Jordan. Now, the Jewish people were told by God that the immorality, the wickedness of these people in the land of Israel was intolerable to God, and he wanted them out of the land of Israel. So before the Jewish people crossed over, Joshua sent them a letter. He told them they have 3 options. The very first option that they have is to renounce idolatry and to accept upon themselves the 7 commandments of all human beings to live morally. If they refuse that option, then they would have the option to leave the land. They could just pack their bags, continue their idolatrous and immoral ways, and go somewhere else. And the Jewish people would not chase after them. They would not hurt them. But if both of those options were refused, and the people chose to stay in the land of Israel, and chose to continue in idolatrous ways and immoral ways, then what would happen is that the Jewish people would come and they would wipe out that community. There was one nation, the Gagashi, that decided, hey, you know what? We've seen the miracles that the God of Israel did for the Jewish people. We don't want to start up with him. We're packing our bags. We're leaving. So the Gagashi, they packed their bags. They left. And according to oral tradition, they were actually rewarded with a beautiful swath of land in Africa. So they resettled there. No harm came to them. The other idolatrous nations that chose to stay in the land of Israel, they decided they wanted to battle. Once Joshua and the Jewish people crossed over the Jordan, at that point, God didn't allow them to make a pact with these people anymore. At that point, they were only allowed to destroy them. So these idolatrous nations, they fortified themselves, they prepared for battle, and the Jewish people began fighting different cities, and they realized that, oh, these are serious opponents because God is on their side. One nation, the Gibeonites, decided, hey, you know what, we're not going to be able to overthrow these children of Israel, and we should have accepted the pact of peace, and we should have committed to living as moral human beings and renouncing idolatry when we were offered that chance, but now we've lost it. So they came up with a way to deceive the children of Israel and to secure a pact of peace. What they did was they dressed themselves as travelers who were coming from a very long distance. They had wineskins that looked like they were old and broken apart. They had dried out bread that looked as if it was made many days ago. And they presented themselves as travelers from far away. You can see all of this in Joshua chapter 9. They approached the children of Israel and they said, we've heard what your God has done for you, and we want to make a pact of peace with you. We want to live as you want us to live, and we will serve you. The only thing we ask is to come under the umbrella of your protection. So the Jewish people said, of course, yes, you can do that. We will welcome you in as long as you no longer engage in idolatry and immorality. This pact of peace was sealed. And 3 days later, the Jewish people found out, oh, these are actually our neighbors. These are the Gibeonites. Now, according to the law, the pact was null and void because it was based upon deceit. So the Jewish people, they could easily have backed out of this pact, and yet they didn't want to do that. They said, we are representing God. And what would people say if they say, oh, the Jewish people made a pact and they didn't uphold it, if they didn't know the detail that there was actually deceit involved? So they decided, we're going to eternally uphold this pact. We will respect the Gibeonites. They will be allowed to live within our borders. We will protect them. We will care for them. And you can see that the Jewish people actually protected the Gibeonites when the other nations rose up to attack the Gibeonites. Now here's a key point. Joshua told the Gibeonites, you offered to be our servants, so what we're going to do is we're going to give you a very special job. You are going to be the woodcutters and the water gatherers for the tabernacle. What did Joshua say this for? Joshua thought, hey, these people are coming and they're attaching themselves to God and to the Jewish people, but they're not really sincere. They're doing it just to save their lives. He said, but hey, if we're going to put them where they're in constant daily contact with the tabernacle, they're going to be around holy people. They're going to see holy things going on. Hopefully they will come to sincerely serve God. It will have a positive impact upon them. So wherever the tabernacle was, that's where the Gibeonite people were to be found. Let's fast forward to the book of 1 Samuel. Over in 1 Samuel, we find that King David is being chased by Saul, who wants to kill him. Where does King David run? King David runs to the tabernacle. He goes up to Ahimelech and he tells him, he said, I'm sent on a special mission from the king. My men are hungry. I didn't have time to bring my weaponry with me. Do you have a sword that I can have? And do you have food for my people? So Ahimelech, the high priest, gives him food and he gives him the sword. He has no clue that King David is actually running from Saul in order to save his life. However, there was another person there who was a evil, very, very evil person. His name was Doeg, and he was an Edomite. So Doeg saw that King David was there, and what did he do? He ran to King Saul and he tattletaled. He said, guess who I saw over at the tabernacle? It was a horrific thing to do. So Saul believed that the priests were siding with King David against him and that they were mounting an insurrection. So he summoned the 85 priests of the tabernacle and he brought them to him, and he interrogated Ahimelech, the high priest. And even though the priest told him, I knew absolutely nothing about this, he didn't believe him. He was too scared, and he commanded his servants to kill the priest. But these Jewish servants said, no, we're not slaughtering these innocent priests, not starting up with God's people. But Doeg, who was there, he was more than willing to do it, and he slaughtered the 85 priests. Then Saul turned his attention on the city of Nov, where the tabernacle was. Who lived inside of that city? Who were the water carriers and the woodcutters? The Gibeonites. Saul and his people were overzealous in trying to protect their kingdom, and they went and they slaughtered the Gibeonites, innocent people who attached themselves to the God of Israel. God could not handle this, and for that reason he sent a famine in the days of King David, and he told him, he said, this is because of the Gibeonites. They're still aching over this. They still can't come to themselves that the Jewish people did such a horrific thing to them. And King David, because you weren't careful enough to conceal yourself from Doeg HaEdomi, and even though you didn't intentionally mean it, you had a hand in this horrific thing, he said, your hand is going to rectify this. So King David inquired of God, and it was revealed to him that there were children of Saul who attacked the Gibeonites and slaughtered them unjustly. King David's job was to rectify the sin. So he approached the Gibeonites and he said, you are allowed to be the blood redeemers. You are allowed to kill the people who killed your innocent family. He said, but can you override that? Can you have compassion? I'll give you whatever you want. And they were not able to override the compassion. They said, absolutely not. We want the 7 men who participated in the slaughter. So King David handed over the 7 men who were legally able to be killed by the people who had innocent family that were murdered. One of the grandchildren of Saul, Jonathan's son, King David rejoiced over because he was able to offer him protection because he had been innocent. He had not been involved in this massacre of the Gibeonite people. We know this because he was only 5 years old when King Saul died. That means he was a baby when the Gibeonite massacre happened. So Mephibosheth was justified as not being sent along with these other people, but the 7 who were guilty were sent to these people, and the Gibeonites killed them. The whole point of the story was not vicarious atonement. This was when somebody treats somebody else unjustly. Yes, there are rules put in place that they have to pay the price. God cares about the innocent. He cares about those who are treated unjustly. We have laws, we have obligations, we have a moral society to hold intact. God will not handle the injustices against these people. If a person connects himself to the God of Israel, whether they are Jew or Gentile, they're supposed to be under the umbrella of protection of the Jewish people. And we have to treat them with dignity and compassion. God is just, and it is our job to be just as well. There was no vicarious atonement. There was no slaughter of innocents. The innocent shall not die for the wicked. God does not accept it. God cares for innocent people. He does not allow innocent people to just be slaughtered.